Okay, so I'm kind of making a little refresher video for you guys so that we can kind of talk about character, setting, theme, what they are, kind of get an overview, and so you can watch this on your own time, kind of go through it, or if you have questions and you can ask me on Remind, whatever. I just kind of wanted to give you a way to kind of go back through it if you were stuck on a spot and see if this helps. Maybe I can try to show it to you in a different way. So let's go next slide. So when we talk about characters up here, the big thing about characters is that when we are analyzing characters, we analyze them just like we would a regular human being that we meet in our own lives. Because, guys, that's where the word character even comes from, because we all have our own character. So there are characters in our everyday world. And you already do this. This is already a skill that you use when we meet people. We kind of analyze who they are and we decide what kind of person they are based on the things that we know about them. So if we look over here, I'm going to show you each one. So we can talk about what a character thinks or believes, and a lot of time that happens in the story. What they think or believe, and that will kind of tell us a lot about who they are, what they believe to be true, what they think about, things that they say. So whatever you say, whatever a character says is something that will also give us a clue about who they are. The things that our characters do, for instance, if they're super mean or super nice or anywhere in between, the actions that they do in these novels and stories kind of tell us what sort of person that they are. There's also their appearance, and so one's appearance will also tell you a lot about who they are. And finally, their feelings on things, that's another thing that will tell you a little bit about who they are. So when you are reading, right, you are trying to look for these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, to see the character's personality, to see if how the character's personality is revealed to you, because authors use all of these things, so what they think, what they say, what they do, their appearance and their feelings, to tell us about their personality. And once again, when you are reading, not necessarily the first impression you get of your character is always going to be who they are. A lot of times you have to get to the end of the book before you really figure out who a character really is, because a lot of times they can, just like people, portray themselves one way in the beginning and then at the end it's completely different. So then let's talk about the setting. So this is the one I feel like is the trickiest for people, but it's actually, I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible right here. So the setting, all I wanted you to really get out of that is that the setting is more than just the place or time, okay? It is a component of, or it's their whole environment, everything that's around you in real life and in stories, everything that's around the character, it is the setting, right? Everything that's around them, their whole environment. So that is comprised of 3 different parts. So the setting has parts that are social, the setting has parts that are physical, and the setting has parts that are time oriented or temporal. So when we talk about social, every part of the setting that is social deals directly with people and the characters' relationships with each other. So, for instance, if you're reading The Hay You Give, think about society and the social aspect and how that plays into that story. If you're reading I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, Ama and the way her relationship is with Julia, sorry, that is a social part of the setting. Um, anything that deals with society or interactions is social. Okay. And a lot of times when you talk about social in your writing or you talk about social just in general in discussion, you want to make sure you say, I am talking about the social setting, because a lot of people don't even think about it being a part of the setting, but it absolutely is a part of the environment. And if you make it clear, I'm talking about the social setting, then it gives you more support in what you're saying. The next part of this is the physical setting. So this is anything that you can touch, feel, see. This is like the physical environment. This is that place, right? The place, whether that's a big city, whether that's a room. So like in Everything, the fact that her physical space is pretty limited to her room, that says something that impacts that character in some way. And time, when we talk about that, that's as simple as it sounds as well. That is the time period in which the story takes place, or the amount of time that the story spans. So is it years, weeks, days, whatever, and how does that impact the story um, and the characters, right? And what we see of the characters. So, or daytime, nighttime, any of that. The whole point of about the setting though is that it in wherever we drop this character, so if you think about a character like a little thing that you can drop into a setting, you have to just like you have to see how the setting sort of all these things sort of impact that character. How do these things limit the character? So for instance, like in I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, the fact that Ama is super depressed and she doesn't give her daughter her basic needs, like she doesn't make her own food and everything like that. How does that affect how does that social part affect Julia in the story? Or how does the physical space affect the character? Or how does the time affect the character? So when you're looking at setting, you're really trying to figure out how does this limit the character and what they can do, and how is it impacting their life? So, and then the last thing that we're going to talk about is the theme. So the theme is like, it's my favorite part of literature because it's all encompassing. When we talk about themes, we're talking about what literature really is, if you want me to be honest. Um, and a lot of times you don't hear people say the word theme exactly. They say something along the lines of, this book makes a comment on something in society, or this book generally is about whatever thing in society. But the theme is really the big message about life, like the reason that the author wrote the book in the first place. So it kind of starts with like the author, and they have something in their mind that they really want to share with the world, and then they write their story, right? And when they write their story, through the words that they put on the page, through the things that they say in that book, through their characters, through the conflict that we talked about today, through their setting, through all of the things that they put together in that story, they're trying to send you a message. They're trying to say, this is what this book is trying to teach you about life. And so you, when you are reading, you use all of those things, character setting, conflict, and you try to say, okay, what is this author trying to tell me? What is the bigger deal here in society? So it's not necessarily something in the book. It is a bigger message about life. They're trying, there's a reason they wrote the book, and that's what you're trying to figure out. And that's what makes literature cool, because then you can say, okay, this applies to my life in this way, or I can see a different part of society through this book, or this book teaches me something that I didn't see before. It's new. It's a different message. It's not a message I've seen. And a message doesn't have to necessarily be a lesson. Um, it could be like death is hard to deal with. That's a theme, right? And that's not necessarily a lesson. And it also doesn't have to be something you agree with. It could be, like, I'm trying to think of something controversial, but it could be that friendship is bad. I don't know. There's a whole, I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. So whatever the author's theme is, this person, it doesn't have to be something that you necessarily agree with. It's their message. And then when you look at these components and you look at the story, then you figure out this. So hopefully that sort of clears things up a little bit, or allows you to kind of chunk this up and think about it in small parts. And when you're working through your literary analysis, you're really just looking at how do all of these things come together. Like this is the big ticket item right here. Everything always goes back to theme, right? Because the plot is just the story itself. And so all of these different components and the plot, how do they show us whatever this is? Because that's why people read, right? We don't read. I mean, you read to figure out what is the point. And this right here is the point.